Any idea where that is? Oroville Lake, Northern California. It's a red California, and apparently the drought that you're in out west here has been severe. And as you can see from this picture that the water levels are not quite up to where they should be. And what does that mean? That means that this reservoir is not fulfilling two of the key purposes it was created for. The first of which is to provide life-giving water. As of now, the electrical production at this facility is shut down because the water levels are so low. In fact, if the reservoir continues to decline and not be replenished, it will become useless. It will not accomplish its purpose. So what's that have to do with us Christians? Everything. You see, we Christians, the Lord's church, are like a reservoir. We too need to be replenished, or we will fail to accomplish the God-given purpose we have. For example, if I do not replenish myself in God's Word, I will eventually become useless in His kingdom. If the Bostonia congregation does not replenish themselves, they will eventually become useless as part of the Lord's universal church. Is this serious? Listen to what Jesus says in John 15, verses 1 through 3. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, so that it may bear more fruit. We see the relationship between God, the vine dresser, Jesus, the vine, and every branch. What do you think every branch is referring to in this statement? Jesus is referring to every disciple of his, every person that calls himself a Christian, everyone that has said at one time in their life that they're going to submit to the lordship of Jesus Christ and they're going to follow him. So what's Jesus say about this? It's not too encouraging for those vines that don't produce, but it is very encouraging to those vines that do produce. And so what do we mean by essentially keeping our reservoir full? Essentially doing our purpose, fulfilling our God-given purpose in life. So what do you think about this? That reservoir looks pretty empty up there in Oroville. God doesn't want empty reservoirs in his kingdom because they don't accomplish the purpose for which he created them. Okay, so just what is our purpose? What is our purpose? A branch of Jesus. What do we look like? How do we bear fruit? What does it mean to bear fruit? Do disciples bear fruit? Like the Oroville Reservoir, not producing electricity currently, and if it does not become refilled, replenished, not being able to provide water for the people it was intended to, we Christians can eventually run dry as well. Christians can get to the point of not fulfilling our purpose unless we are continually being replenished. In other words, in Matthew 5, Jesus is saying these two things. He's saying that prior to this, in the beginning of chapter 5, Jesus speaks to what we refer to as the Beatitudes. And these Beatitudes, Darrell spoke to a few Sunday nights ago in his introduction to the Sermon on the Mount. And the Beatitudes are essentially the ideal characteristics that a disciple in the kingdom of heaven would look like. And after Jesus explained this, he went on to say that, and this is what your purpose is. You guys and you gals are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. So what does that mean? It means that being a disciple of Jesus is very important because it is our purpose in life. Jesus reminds us of the consequences of not fulfilling. He goes on to say, salt has become tasteless. How can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by people. Not good. Remember remember about this topic of the bearing fruit. God will take away the branches that do not bear fruit. James reminds us something also that is critically important to recognize and remember. In James 1:22, James reminds us that we are to be doers of the word and not just hearers. But now here's the kicker. And not just hearers who deceive themselves. So if all you're doing is hearing the word and registering it, and you're a walking, talking Bible, that's good. But unless you're employing that in your walk and talk in your daily life, quite honestly, James is saying we're deceiving ourselves. So let's get back to replenishment. How is it that we Christians will replenish ourselves? We talk about 3 points here. How as a Christian am I to be replenished? And then follow on as how is a congregation replenished? You notice this reservoir is full to the brim. It has been replenished. It's being used and being replenished. Psalm 111 verse 10 reads this: "The fear or reverence of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. All those who follow his commandments have a good understanding. His praise endures forever." So what do we take away from the psalmist here? I would submit to you that the main point here is that we are to know God. We are to fear. We are to revere God. Unfortunately, we live in a society that, quite honestly, doesn't revere or fear God. We live in a society of people, and it's not necessarily this generation, it's gone on ever since creation. But it's our time, so we recognize it and we must address it. But we live in a society that basically says, I think I know what's better than God does, and I will create God in my image, and God will do what I want him to do. And will have God be my reason for what I do. In other words, we have a society of people that have forgotten who the Creator is and have basically put themselves in the place of as the Creator. And that is described in a worldview that we now live within called the postmodern era worldview, where essentially there is no such thing as absolute truth. Most everything is referred to in relativistic terms. In other words, I'm okay, you're okay. Let's live life and be happy, live together. That's not quite how it is. There is indeed an absolute truth, and God established that. The second point we find in Hosea 4:6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Since you have rejected knowledge and you're exposed to a